Think in new ways, and you will change your mind. Change your mind, and you will change your life. Maxime Lagacé. We often wait for life to change before we allow ourselves to think differently, when in reality, the way we think is the silent key that turns the heavy doors of destiny. Thought is not fixed. It is like a stream of water, flowing according to the terrain we create. When you force yourself to approach a problem from a different perspective, you are restructuring that very terrain. Old cognitive ruts begin to crack, giving way to new currents. We have a tendency to protect ourselves through familiarity. The mind craves repetitive thoughts, even negative ones, because they provide a false sense of security. But that very security is an invisible cage. When you dare to think differently, even a small shift, you create a cognitive shock, forcing the brain to readapt. And in that process, you begin to see possibilities that were previously obscured by your own biases. Life is not something that happens to you. It is something interpreted by you. Two people can stand before the same circumstances, yet live two entirely different lives simply because they think differently. One sees a dead end. The other sees an opportunity. One sees failure. The other sees a lesson. And from those perspectives, actions are born, habits are formed, and destiny is gradually shaped. Changing your life doesn't start with grand, sweeping strides, but from a single act of daring to doubt the way you are thinking. When you achieve that, you aren't just changing your mind, you are rewriting the way you exist in this world. The most important secret to living is to become your own best friend. Everything becomes easier when you can do that. Cory Muscara. Your closest companion isn't your family, your friends, or anyone else. It is the inner voice within you. Yet most people treat themselves in a way they would never treat a friend. Harshly, skeptically, and at times, cruelly. Think of it as a closed room where you must live for a lifetime. If in that room, the voice is always criticizing, comparing, and denying, then no matter how beautiful the world outside is, you will never find peace. Conversely, when you become a true friend to yourself, knowing how to listen, understand, and support, then even on the gloomiest days, you still have a safe refuge. This is not about blind self-indulgence, but about knowing when to forgive, when to push, and when to simply accept. It is like shifting your role from judge to companion. Then, every mistake is no longer proof of incompetence, but data for growth. Every failure is no longer a full stop, but a transition. And when you no longer have to fight yourself, energy is released for you to face the outside world with more grace. Life becomes easier not because things are less difficult, but because you are no longer the one making everything heavy. When you stand by your own side instead of against yourself, you create a solid foundation that no circumstance can easily shake. And from there, you don't just exist, you begin to truly live. The best life is not found in comfort. It lies in fighting for what you believe in. Maxime Lagacé. A good life is often thought of as a peaceful one, without friction or disturbance. But the truth wears a far harsher mask. Life only truly gains meaning when it is tested by the things we dare to believe and protect. Comfort, like a soft, pleasant chair, is nice for a moment, but easily makes us stagnant, dulling the edge of our will. Conversely, when you stand up to fight for your beliefs, you enter a more vivid state of being, where every decision carries weight, and every action holds purpose. It is not an easy road, but that very friction generates the heat of life, making you feel clearly that you exist. Struggle is not just about opposing the outside world. It is an internal dialogue with yourself. It is when you refuse to compromise on things that go against your values, even if that compromise offers immediate ease. It is when you accept inconvenience, even loneliness, just to hold firm to something you believe is right. And in that process, you are not just protecting a belief, you are defining your very identity. A life without struggle may look stable, but it often lacks depth. A life that dares to clash for what it believes in, though full of challenges, brings a sense of fulfillment that comfort can never replace. For ultimately, human beings do not seek an easy life. They seek a life worth living. And that only appears when you dare to stand up, not because you have to, but because you choose to. The greatest discovery of any generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitude. William James. It is not the power to control circumstances, but the power to define how we react to them. The greatest discovery of any generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitude. We are touching the core, where man is no longer a victim of the world, but the architect of meaning for his own experiences. Attitude might seem like a vague mental state, but in reality, it acts like a perceptual filter placed before every event. Faced with the same event, one with a negative attitude sees injustice, while one with a positive attitude recognizes a hidden opportunity. It is not because the reality is different, but because the interpretation is. And it is this interpretation that shapes emotions, behavior, and ultimately the outcome of a life. Like the helm of a ship in the middle of the ocean, storms are inevitable, but the direction lies in the hands of the helmsman. When you change your attitude, you don't make the sea calmer, you learn to navigate better. This requires an inner awakening, realizing that one's reaction is not an unchangeable instinct, but a choice that can be trained. A change in attitude does not happen through grand proclamations, but through choosing gratitude over complaining, learning over blaming, and persistence over giving up. These choices, repeated long enough, will restructure your entire internal belief system, and from there, change how you act in the world. Life is not a series of random events imposed upon you, but a story rewritten every day through the attitude you choose. When you change your attitude, you don't just change how you see, you change the person who is seeing, and that is the most profound transformation of all. Life is a question, and how we live, it is our answer. Gary Keller. Life is not a ready-made answer, but a continuous, persistent, and sometimes uncomfortable open question. Every day, life poses wordless questions. How will you react to failure? How will you treat others? Will you be honest with yourself? And the remarkable thing is, you cannot not answer. Even silence, procrastination, or avoidance is a form of answer. It is simply one written in passivity. Life, therefore, is like a mirror, reflecting not what you say, but what you do. How we live is the concrete expression of our internal value system. You can declare that you value kindness, but if your actions are full of calculation, then your true answer has been revealed. This creates a silent but necessary pressure, forcing us to live consistently or accept the contradiction within ourselves. Like a long essay with no rough draft, each decision is a sentence, each habit a paragraph, and over time, they weave together into a complete argument of who you are. No one else can write it for you, and there is no chance to erase and start over. You can only edit through what you do next. When you live consciously, you begin to write clearer answers through courage in the face of hardship, through kindness when no one is watching, and through honesty when it is far from easy. And in the end, your life is not what happened to you, but the answer you persistently wrote day by day. The life you have led doesn't need to be the only life you have. Anna Quindlen. Unconsciously, we turn what has happened into limits for what can happen. The past is only a chapter already written, not the entire book. But the irony is that many live as if they are trapped in a manuscript that cannot be edited, repeating the same patterns of thought, the same reactions, and then acting surprised when the results don't change. We take old failures, wounds, or limitations to define who we are today. You once failed, and so you believe you are a failure. You were once rejected, and so you live as if you are never enough. It is this belief that is the real prison, not the circumstances that have passed. When you believe your life has only one version, you will defend it, even if it doesn't make you happy. But human beings have a capacity to redefine themselves, not by denying the past, but by reinterpreting it. With the same memory, you can see it as proof of weakness or as a landmark of growth. The difference lies not in the event, but in the perspective. And when the perspective changes, behavior changes. When behavior changes, a new version of life begins to take shape, quietly but clearly. You are not a finished statue, but a continuing flow. That flow may have passed through barren lands, but it is not forced to stay there. It can change direction, carve new paths, and find its way to open reaches. The only thing necessary is that you stop seeing the past as a sentence and start seeing it as raw material. The life you have experienced is real, but it is not destiny. You are not bound to live forever in your old version. Every new choice, every different thought, every courageous act is a stroke of the pen, rewriting the story. And at some point, looking back, you will realize you didn't just escape your old life, you outgrew it to create a different one. We should be content with the small things in life. The less we need, the fewer troubles we have. Leo Tolstoy. The more humans accumulate, the more cluttered the mind becomes. Need is not just what we have, it is what we think we cannot live without. And the more of those indispensable things we have, the more we tie ourselves into a web of anxiety, comparison, and dependency. Self-worth tied to possessions suggests more is better, but that is a flawed measurement. Everything you add to your life brings not just utility, but responsibility, expectation, and the fear of loss. Like a room, initially empty but airy. The more it is packed with stuff, the more suffocating it becomes. And notably, that suffocation comes not from lack, but from excess. Being content with small things, a quiet morning, a sincere conversation, a moment free from pressure, you are restructuring your value system. You shift from seeking more to recognizing enough. This is not about giving up ambition, but about keeping what truly matters and letting go of what only creates noise. The fewer things you need, the less you are controlled by circumstances. When your happiness doesn't depend on too many conditions, you become more flexible, more free. You are no longer caught in the whirlwind of having to achieve, to hold on, to prove. Instead, you begin to live with a rare lightness where every small thing can become abundant. Life doesn't become easier because the world is less complex, but because you no longer carry too many unnecessary things. And in that simplification, you don't lose out. You find the space to truly live. Life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful. Annette Funicello, when you chase a standard of perfection, you are placing happiness in a future that always recedes a destination that never truly exists. The need for perfection often stems from a fear of being wrong, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. And to avoid those feelings, we try to control everything, from results and self-image to how others perceive us. But life, with its inherent uncertainty, always shatters those efforts at control. The result is that instead of enjoying what we have, we constantly feel deficient, even when everything is good enough, like a painting that is never finished. If you only focus on seeking perfect strokes, you will miss the beauty found in the rough lines, the mismatched shades. It is those very imperfections that create depth, character, and vitality. Just as a story becomes memorable, not because it is smooth, but because it has conflict, mistakes, and unexpected turns. When you accept that good enough can also be wonderful, you free yourself from a loop of self-judgment. You begin to see life with wider eyes, finding value in small things, seeing meaning in incomplete moments. This doesn't stop you from growing. On the contrary, it gives you a healthy foundation to move forward, not from lack, but from appreciation. Life doesn't become wonderful when it reaches a benchmark of perfection, but when you stop demanding it to be so. And in the moment you accept that imperfection, you realize the true beauty of life has always been there. Only before, you were too busy searching for a non-existent version to notice it. The three most important things in life are health, mission, and the people you love. That's it. Naval Ravikant. Health is the silent foundation. When you have it, you rarely think of it. When it is gone, everything else immediately becomes secondary. It is like invisible but essential air, supporting every action, every dream. Without health, mission becomes a burden, and love is limited by the exhaustion of both body and spirit. Mission, at a deeper level, is the reason you wake up every morning without being pushed. It doesn't necessarily have to be something grand. Sometimes it's just the feeling that your life is heading towards something meaningful. If health is the energy, then mission is the direction. Without it, people easily fall into a state of drifting, busy but empty, active but not truly living. The people you love, that is where all effort becomes meaningful. Human beings are not designed to exist alone. We need to be seen, to be heard, to be connected. Love, in its broadest sense, is what softens the harsh edges of life. It doesn't eliminate hardship, but it makes hardship bearable. Health gives you the ability to pursue your mission. Mission brings depth to life, and love is the thing that keeps you from losing your way on that journey. When all three are present, even if not perfect, you have a very real sense of sufficiency. That's it. But that very it is what people often trade away the most, to chase after things more complex, but hollower. And perhaps maturing is not about having more, but about realizing what is truly worth keeping. To fill the hour that is happiness. Ralph Waldo Emerson. It is not about how much time we have, but how much of that time we actually live in. Most humans exist in a state of passing through, working while thinking about resting, resting while worrying about tomorrow. The mind is always elsewhere, making the present a forgotten void. And it is this void that creates a sense of lack, even when life may be full. When you fill the hour, it doesn't mean you must be constantly busy, but that you are fully present in what you are doing. whether it is an important task or a very ordinary moment. When you truly pay attention, a conversation becomes deeper, a meal becomes more complete. Even a silence carries meaning. Life doesn't need more events to be rich. It only needs more attention. Each hour is like a glass. If you don't pour your presence into it, it will pass by empty, even if the outside appears full of activity. But when you truly live in it, that glass becomes valuable, not because it is large, but because it is filled the right way. Happiness is not the sum of grand things, but the accumulation of moments lived fully. When you stop chasing distant peaks and begin to notice each current step, you will realize life is not lacking in things to enjoy. It's just that before, you were passing through it too quickly.